All right, so moving on to the next segment. I'll be sharing my thoughts on which NBA players are under the most pressure to succeed heading into the NBA postseason. So we're a month away from the NBA playoffs. That's really when the new season of basketball begins and the most pivotal part of the season begins. Springtime from April to June is the most important time in the NBA. That's when the playoffs roll around. So these following four players I do believe will be under the most pressure to succeed this NBA postseason. Starting off with Cleveland Cavaliers star Donovan Mitchell. I do believe that Donovan Mitchell is under a lot of pressure to succeed this NBA postseason based on the way how the Cleveland Cavaliers have been dominant, the best team in the Eastern Conference all season long, even over the reigning defending NBA champions and the Boston Celtics. The Cavs have been the top tier team in the East all year. But I've been high on this Cavaliers team all year long. I've been praising them every time we talk about NBA on this podcast. But when it comes playoff time, Donovan Mitchell's going to have to put together the best postseason run of his NBA career if the Cavs want to at least get to the Eastern Conference Finals. And I feel like if they don't make it there, it's a disappointment for their season. And Donovan Mitchell has never been to the conference finals in his NBA career thus far. If you go back to his time with the Utah Jazz, when him and Rudy Gobert were a duo out there in Utah, they were a part of some pretty good teams out there in the West. But they could never get to the Western Conference Finals, and ever since Donovan Mitchell has been with the Cleveland Cavaliers, they've gone as far as the second round when they got booted out last year by the Boston Celtics. So this year, Donovan Mitchell, it's put up or shut up time in Cleveland. He has the roster to do it. They got a death throes lineup of Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, DeAndre Hunter, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, and they got a really good supporting cast on their bench in their rotation of shooters. Max Schroeder is there as well. So there's no excuses for Donovan Mitchell not to show up and step up when it matters most for the Cleveland Cavaliers to get at least to the Eastern Conference Finals this NBA playoffs. And I think honestly, he's under a lot of pressure to succeed because Donovan Mitchell, as a shooting guard, no doubt is one of the best guards in the league right now. But in order to cement your legacy as a great player in the NBA, you got to put together these playoff performances. You got to duplicate what you do in the regular season to the playoffs, because that's where legacies are born, champions are created. You got to go out there and show us something. So now it's time for Donovan Mitchell to pull it all together, go on a deep playoff run. I think he's under a lot of pressure to succeed this NBA season. Now, next is Jimmy Butler. Well. As a Miami Heat fan, Jimmy Butler wanted out of Miami to chase a championship. Well, if I'm being honest, Jimmy Butler did give it his all to help the Miami Heat win an NBA title. He took us to 3 Eastern Conference Finals and 2 NBA Finals with this time with the Miami Heat. We just came up short and ran into 2 better teams out in the West when we matched up against them in the NBA Finals, that being the Lakers in 2020 and the Nuggets in 2023. So I get that Jimmy Butler still wants to win his first NBA title, but now you go to the Golden State Warriors that really only has Steph Curry and Draymond Green to help them push for an NBA title right now. They got a solid rotation, but in terms of players that could get you over the hump and players that can help you go on a deep playoff run, I'm just looking at Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, and Steph Curry because they have the playoff experience. But Jimmy Butler was brought to the Bay Area and signed on an extension to help Steph Curry go on one more run for an NBA title. If he can't deliver, then I don't think Jimmy Butler is ever going to win an NBA title. And we're getting into the later parts of his career. He's 35 years of age, he's knocking on the door to his late 30s. Jimmy Butler's production after this season could go down. I think if Jimmy Butler is going to win an NBA title, he's got to cash in very soon. And I think he's under a lot of pressure to succeed this NBA postseason playing alongside Steph Curry because you were brought there to win a title. So Jimmy Butler, they made the team dramatically better since he's been there. They're a better shooting team. They play better defense. They draw fouls to get to the free throw line to add up more points on the scoreboard. But it's time for Jimmy Butler to prove why he wanted to be a part of a championship caliber team by playing with the best shooter on God's green earth in Steph Curry. So now I think Jimmy Butler's got to prove to us that he is a championship player. Now, next is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Now, I got to put Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, SGA, on this list because he's putting together an MVP caliber season, and he could be on his way to winning his first MVP award of his NBA career thus far. He's averaging 32 points per game, shooting from the field, shooting 52% from the field. He's had 4 50-point games this NBA season. That's remarkable. He's a phenomenal scorer, and he's the reason why the Thunder have been the best team out in the West this NBA season. And he did it without his guy Chet Holmgren, and without Chet Holmgren in the lineup for a long period of time, and held it down for him as they remained the best team in the West. So, and I gotta say that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's play on the court and his leadership is the reason why OKC has been good thus far as this young, talented team. And they could get the number 1 seed out in the West this NBA postseason. But my only concern about SGA is his legs cannot get tired. He's played a lot of games this year, a lot of minutes, a lot of games and performances. And eventually, especially playing the NBA, the mileage does catch up on your body. So I hope he doesn't get tired for the NBA postseason, and I hope he shows up in the NBA postseason, because for somebody that can win the MVP award, if you win the MVP, you are proclaimed to be the best player in the league for that season. If the best player in the league cannot duplicate his game over to the playoffs, that's a problem. Young or not, SGA is under a lot of pressure to succeed for OKC this postseason, because you have been responsible for getting them to this point thus far. You gained your playoff experience last year. Yes, you beat a depleted Pelicans team in the first round that did not have Zion Williamson. I get that. But in the second round, when you played the Dallas Mavericks, the team that went on to the NBA Finals, you gained a lot of experience from that playoff series playing against Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. So my thing is for SGA is he's got to take what he learned last year and bring it to the dance for the playoffs this year, because if you get showed up by a team that you're expected to beat, that's a disappointment in my eyes. And like I just said in the last segment, I don't think that I'm not confident enough right now that the Lakers could beat OKC in a 7-game series. So that goes to show you how confident I am in this OKC team. Young or not, I think they gained a little bit of experience last year when they were in the playoffs. SGA has to duplicate his game for the regular season to the postseason, especially if he wins the MVP this year. So SGA, I'm putting him on the list under a player that's under a lot of pressure to succeed. And last, I know I was supposed to say a player, but I have a duo, because I'm holding them both responsible to the expectations that were set when they were paired together out there in Milwaukee. And I'm talking about Giannis and Damian Lillard. Now, this duo was paired last year before the beginning part of the NBA season last year. The duo of Giannis and Damian Lillard, 1-2 combo. Both of these guys can take over a ball game whenever you demand them to. And both are averaging over 25 points per game as I record this segment. This duo was put together in Milwaukee to win a title. Damian Lillard left Portland. He left the Trailblazers to finally become an NBA champion. That is the reason why Giannis and Damian Lillard are together out there in Milwaukee. So they got to have a better outcome than what they had last NBA postseason. It wasn't their fault why they were a first-round exit to the Indiana Pacers. Giannis was injured the entire first round against the Pacers. And then Damian Lillard went down in that series, I do believe. If he didn't, I apologize, but I'm pretty sure that Damian Lillard did not finish that series out in the first round. And then they got hit with a curveball when they brought in Doc Rivers to become their head coach at the midway point of their season last year. So it was all over the place for Milwaukee last NBA season. But this time around, I'm holding them to a high standard, because Giannis and Damian Lillard, especially Giannis, who just won a title, his first title a few years ago. And Damian Lillard doesn't have an NBA title, but he's been in a lot of big-time games and had a lot of clutch performances throughout the playoffs in his NBA career. So this duo has the They have the experience out there in the playoffs. And I feel like looking at how the East is playing out, if they are a first round exit this postseason to a team like the Detroit Pistons, and I am not disrespecting the Detroit Pistons, but this is a team, this Pistons team, they have turned it around, yes. They were the worst team in the league last year, yes. But if they cannot beat the Detroit Pistons, if they match up against them in the first round, I think that's a real disappointment, because there's only one Katie Cunningham for the Pistons, and there's two players that can destroy you the entire series, and that being Giannis and Damian Lillard. I'm gonna say the Pistons. If they lose to the Pistons, the Miami Heat that have not looked like their normal selves this year, but they do have the Bucks number when it matters most in the postseason, or the Orlando Magic. Depending on if they lose in the first round, especially to one of these three teams that I just mentioned, they got to consider splitting up the duo of Giannis and Damian Lillard. And some people might say, why split them up if they are not successful for their first playoff run together? Nowadays in the NBA, the way how the league is set up, if duos don't work out within the first season or two and they underachieve, front offices are looking to retool their roster, blow it up, rebuild, and gain draft capital for getting something out of one of the duo players. Because I'm not saying it's impossible, but nowadays it's hard to win titles when you have a star duo, and a roster that does not have a lot. Your roster doesn't have a lot of depth. Just ask the Phoenix Suns right now of how their trio of Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal is working out. On paper, a tremendous duo or trio, but then when you look at the supporting cast, there's nobody to help them, and you're running those players into the ground, playing them 35 to 40 plus minutes a night on a nightly basis. But Giannis and Damian Lillard, they got a supporting cast still, but I just think if they underachieve and they're a first round exit this year to a team that they should beat in a 7-game series, they're going to think about splitting them up. So those are the following players I do believe are under the most pressure to succeed this NBA postseason.